Je vais parler de what a fun term I just discovered, which is what is flamenco fire, and is it something worth your time to consider if you care about fire in all or any of its variations. Hey, Zunpuck here. Another day not working for anyone but my gosh darn self. So I'm not sure if I can really call myself very involved in the fire community. I think the best way I can put it is that I'm very interested in the community. I read the forums and Reddits and groups out there, sure, but honestly, there's a lot of very good detailed advice out there already, so I can only contribute occasionally. But I will say this, I have never ever thought the idea of fire is overexposed. It really hasn't been, and it isn't now, even today, right? That's why I use my tiny little platform to talk about fire whenever I can, because I think the more people hearing about aspects of fire, the better. Maybe someday the concept will be normalized and the average Joe won't think that it's an unreachable goal, right? Which brings me to today's topic. I saw this term on the Facebook Fire group post where some dude was like, blah blah blah, this is my path to flamenco fire, and I was like, wait, what now? So I did have to look it up and found it quite amusing, shall we say. So today I'm going to define it and tell you my thoughts on its advantages and disadvantages, and most importantly, whether this is a variation of fire that might work for you. Okay. Anyway, if you're intrigued by what I might say, please subscribe, like, comment, share, and all that social media buzzwords or whatever, because I'm rich enough for me and will be great regardless of what you do. So first, what is it and why is it called flamenco fire? I will link the definition below. I think it's just from one website, but I can summarize pretty quickly, right? It just means that first you have to get to some level of coast FI, which is where you stash a bunch in retirement accounts to only 12.5x your living expense, unlike the usual 25x that most fire adherents would ask for. Then you can quit your stressful main-time gig for something that just pays for your living expenses for most likely another 10 years or so, during which time your 12.5x will likely double to 25x, allowing you to fully fire. Of course, if all goes according to plan, right? So in this plan, if you make a regular wage, the first phase might take you like 10 years and the second one another 10 years, so maybe a career of 20 years. Not too bad, is it? Oh, by the way, and the name flamenco, I guess it comes from the idea that during the half of the time that you're just standing on that single leg of still having a job, but only one that needs to sustain a regular lifestyle without the added burden of having to further contribute to the nest egg at the same time, right? Now, the key difference between flamenco fire and all other fire is this middle stage of 10 years working without contributing further into the nest egg period. The author calls this period semi-retirement and is the most curious aspect of the whole thing to me, right? I have to say, I do really love his illustrations on this matter. If you go to his website, the idea is basically regular stressful work that we all want to get out of is like working on two legs, and the semi-retirement period just involves work that's like working on one leg because it's easier? I'm not sure whether the analogy really holds, right? I have terrible balance, so just trying to imagine standing on one leg stresses me, actually. But hey, maybe that's just me. And now the much more fun part of my own dissection of this idea. So, are there advantages of this style of retirement? Actually, yes. I'd say if you feel like your main current gig is extremely stressful and unfulfilling, that you really cannot wait to get out of it. I mean, I'm assuming maybe you work in a soulless industry like high finance or tobacco or whatever bothers you. No judgment, right? Then maybe this method will help to minimize the time you need to spend in said field, right? After all, the huge advantage of this flamenco stutter step method into fire is that you can half your initial nest egg amount, right? For most people, I think even this half amount will still need to be somewhere around 500k to a mil in this day and age, right? Let's be realistic. If you can get to even 500k in your 30s or 40s, you're doing very well compared to your peers. Having to wait another 10 years for that amount to double hopefully shouldn't be a problem, especially considering in this like flamenco fire's timeline, right? You'd still have some kind of job anyway. So let's say if the market goes awry in this semi-retirement period, it would be relatively simple to pivot back into slightly better compensated work if it comes to that. Also, you don't need to worry about, things like gaps in employment history or a lack of health insurance, because, that semi-retirement period is not exactly a blink of an eye, right? The initial accumulation phase is usually what takes most people the longest amount of time. So to be able to have that number will cut down quite a few years off the accumulation stage, right? My personal experience, for example, would be, well, I got to my lean fire number around, I turned 33, I think. So, but if I could have gotten away with half of what that nesting amount would be, I would have been done with my regular gig probably maybe even 28, 29, but definitely before 30. Okay, so 4 years saved, I would say. But my final point, is it all grits and gravy for Flamenco FIRE? You know me, I am a cynic, so I think there are some sizable holes in this narrative as well. And frankly, its biggest asset is also, for me, its biggest plot hole. I mean, how many people really, really, really hate their main gig? I'm sure there's a good minority, but my first suggestion in that case is simply to change, employers. Maybe find one that pays similarly in a different corporate environment and just tough it out instead of adding this entirely unnecessary semi-retirement period at all. After all, maybe that 10-year period of semi-retirement will be less stressful because you're just, waiting for your already relatively sizable nest egg to double, right? But it won't be remotely stress-free for the main reason anyone would want to fire to begin with, which is, drumroll please, you'd still have a regular job, okay? Seriously, who the heck wants that? I can say this with 100% confidence because I'm already early retired for a handful of years now. Never, ever, ever have I regretted my decision and thought, oh man, wouldn't it be great to go work for somebody else again? Okay, to have them dictate to me my schedule, what to do, what to work on, what's important. You know who knows best about what's best for me? Me and no one but me. Okay, so why the heck would anyone want to tag on some silly middle stage of working as a barista or whatever low pressure job just for schnitz and giggles? I mean, I get working just to maintain if I needed to do it, but if you're into fire, why not sprint a little harder or keep your pedal on the gas a few years longer instead of voluntarily slowing down just to have to run instead of rest for another decade. Yeah, no, I wouldn't pick this method, okay? Now, in conclusion, obviously, if you actually read the article that I linked, right, the author actually addresses the concern of whether people who hit fire actually simply rest and do no more work. His argument of why Flamenco FIRE is a reasonable alternative is that most people who do reach early retirement will end up doing some type of work anyway. So Flamenco FIRE is just a standardized version of that, kind of like a reasonable step down, right? Rather than like a huge oscillation. But he's missing a key component here, right? Again, I'm going to use myself as an example. I'm already fired and I absolutely do stuff that I consider productive, such as making these clips, okay? The key difference is that I don't need to do this at all. Let's say if I'm not feeling so hot or I have a holiday booked, I can just skip my so-called work with zero consequence. So yeah, is Flamenco FIRE a method for fire? Kinda, for people who really don't mind dragging their feet, I guess. Definitely not my preference, but then I have a biased opinion because I've already achieved the gold standard, regular fire at the very least, right? You can argue if I'm in chubby or fat fire, but that's a topic for another day. But we're all different, right? What do you think about this topic? Will you try Flamenco firing your way into early retirement? Let me know in the comments below. Cheers, I'll approach it.